When I found out where the money I gave my wife to start her cafe had really gone, I couldn't believe she could do something like that to me, and to our family. But back then I was just a husband trying to make his wife smile again. That evening, when I walked in through the front door, I still had my work shoes on, dusted in the pale gray concrete from the site. The air inside our home smelled like something warm, vanilla maybe, or cinnamon. Comfort. And there she was, sitting on the couch in her old college hoodie, glowing like she'd just come back from the best day of her life. "Lon," she said, eyes sparkling as she held out the tablet, "look at this." She didn't even wait for me to put my bag down. Just patted the cushion next to her like we were 20 again and she'd just found the perfect Airbnb for our weekend trip. I sat. She leaned into me, her voice soft but charged, and tapped through images of tile samples, espresso machines, mock-ups of a logo, Café Aurelia. Her finger danced across the screen, lighting up every time she spoke. It caught me off guard, that energy in her voice. I hadn't seen her like this in years. "You've been busy," I said, smiling as I nudged her shoulder. "You remember that spot on Main, where the bookstore used to be? It's available. The light in the front is perfect for a seating area with big armchairs. Warm tones. Plants." I already ran some numbers, her words spilled out, overlapping themselves, and I just listened, really listened, the way I used to, back when she still talked to me like this every night. And maybe it was the way her hand trembled ever so slightly when she swiped to the floor plan. Or maybe it was how she kept glancing at me, waiting for a reaction, like she was holding her breath. Whatever it was, something inside me shifted. This was more than a hobby. This was her dream. And for the first time in a long while, I saw her alive. "You think this is the right time?" I asked gently. "I think," she paused. "I think if I don't try now, I'll regret it." It was quiet for a moment, one of those silences that hums just under the surface, charged with unspoken history. I looked at her face, traced by years and late nights and quiet dinners where we said too little. She was beautiful in a way only time can shape. Strong, worn in, real, and happy. I hadn't seen her like this since, maybe since before the miscarriages. Before the quiet crept in. "You know I'd do anything for you, right?" I said finally. Her eyes softened. "I know. And I did mean it. Every word. I wanted to see her thrive. I wanted to believe that building something together could heal what we'd been too tired or too scared to name." She talked for another hour, about blends, pastry suppliers, a local artist she wanted to commission for the mural wall. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the thing that would bring her back to me. Even as she spoke, though, I caught it, just for a second. A look. Like her mind flickered somewhere else, far from that couch, far from my arms. I should have asked her then. Should have followed the thread when it was still loose. But I didn't. I just leaned in, kissed her temple, and said, "Let's see what we can build." I let myself believe in us again. The thing about trust is, it rarely breaks with a bang. It's quieter than that. Slower. Like a small leak under your sink, until one day the whole cabinet's warped and the floor gives way beneath your feet. A few days after that first evening, she brought it up. Not over dinner. Not during a long walk. No, it was a Sunday afternoon, sunlight stretching lazily across the hardwood, and I was halfway through assembling a shelf for the upstairs closet. She walked in with that same buzz in her eyes and a glass of wine in her hand. "Can we talk?" she asked, with that voice women use when they've already decided what the outcome's going to be. "Sure," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. She sat across from me on the edge of the couch, legs tucked beneath her, swirling the wine like it helped her think. "So," she started, "I've been going through the numbers again. With the space, the permits, equipment, even on a tight budget, we're looking at around 75 to 80 grand to get it running." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot." I know it is." She sipped, then looked at me, not pleading, not demanding. Just hopeful. "But this isn't just some side project. I want to do this right. I want it to last." She paused. "And I was thinking, maybe we could do it together. As a family." She said, "as a family," like it was an anchor. Like it made the request smaller somehow. "I'm not saying dump it all in at once," she went on quickly. "We can phase it. Start with equipment, maybe half the lease. Just enough to get us through the first quarter." I didn't answer right away. I sat down beside her, reached for my coffee, cold by now, and stared out the window for a few seconds, thinking. Truth is, I had the money. Between the savings from my contracting jobs, and the house being nearly paid off, we'd built a pretty solid cushion. It wasn't luxury money, but it was safety. Retirement. A future. But this was my wife. And for the first time in a long while, she was asking me to believe in something. "Okay," I said quietly. Her head turned fast. Okay. I'll do it. We'll draw up a schedule. 50 now, and we'll see how things move. She blinked, like she hadn't quite expected me to say yes without a fight. You're serious? I gave her a small smile. You said you'd regret it if you didn't try. I don't want you to carry regret. She put her glass down, leaned over, and kissed me softly on the cheek. Thank you, she whispered. That night, we sat side by side at the kitchen table, just the two of us, a bottle of red between us, and my laptop glowing with the banking app. She hovered close, her fingers brushing mine every now and then, guiding me through wire instructions to the business account. Everything about it felt intimate. Like we were building something together. As I clicked confirm on the first $25,000 transfer, she placed her hand over mine. This is the start of something, she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held something deeper. Something unreadable. I know, I replied. Let's make it good. I went to bed that night feeling lighter. Like I'd just made a down payment not on a cafe, but on hope. On renewal. On some version of us that still had fight left. Looking back now, I wonder if she hesitated even a second when that money cleared. If she felt the weight of what I'd just handed her. Not the funds, but the faith. And how casually it would all be spent. Trust can make you blind in the nicest way. You see what you want to see. You explain away the rest. For the first couple weeks after the transfer, things moved fast. Sienna was out of the house more often, meetings, permits, vendor calls. She talked about paint colors over breakfast, tile textures while brushing her teeth. She even left swatches taped to the fridge like little flags of her new territory. I didn't mind it. If anything, I was proud. It felt good watching her walk with purpose again. But then she started saying his name. Not in any strange way, not at first. It was just woven into casual updates. Nico thinks we should do reclaimed wood for the counter. Nico's cousin runs a bakery, he might help with the pastry side. Nico knows someone at the city office who can push paperwork faster. At some point, I asked, and who is Nico exactly? She answered without missing a beat, while zipping up her jacket. Partner. He's the one who found the space originally. He's done this before, Lon. I need someone who knows what he's doing. She smiled, leaned over, kissed me on the temple, and left before I could ask anything else. The word partner echoed a little too long in my head. Not because I didn't want her to have help, but because something about the way she said it made me feel like I'd missed a chapter. Still, I told myself not to be that guy. The jealous husband. The one who suspects just because someone else is in the picture. This wasn't high school. This was her business. Her dream. And I'd promised to believe in it. So I did. Even when she started coming home later than usual. Even when she began showering right after walking in, saying she just needed to wash the day off. Even when I noticed she'd switched perfumes, something sharper, more floral. Not the warm, woody scent I'd always associated with her. I told myself it was part of the new beginning. New cafe, new wardrobe, new scent. That made sense, right? But little things started piling up like receipts at the bottom of a drawer. One night, she left her phone on the counter while stepping out for a quick grocery run. It buzzed, a name I didn't recognize. Just N. No last name. Just a message bubble, still thinking about what you said. Hope you don't regret it. I didn't open it. I swear I didn't. I just stared at it. Long enough for the screen to fade back to black. When she returned, I was already in the kitchen, pretending to clean the stovetop that was already spotless. She breezed in, humming some song I didn't recognize, set the bag down, and kissed me like nothing was off. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe I was making something out of nothing. But the feeling. That feeling of being slowly, quietly sidelined, it started to settle in. I was the husband with the wallet. The man with the mortgage. And somewhere in that growing cafe dream, I felt myself being replaced by someone who hadn't been around when she used to cry in the middle of the night. Someone who hadn't spent 10 years building a life with her. I still didn't say anything. Because love makes you patient. Or maybe just foolish. I told myself, this is a phase. Once the cafe opens, it'll settle down. We'll settle down. But even as I said that to myself, I could feel it in my bones. We were already settling into something else entirely. You ever get that feeling, like something small is off, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That was me, standing in my office with a phone to my ear and a tightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Landon, Evelyn said on the other end, cautious like she was about to deliver bad news. I wasn't sure if I should call, but something doesn't look right. Evelyn's been my firm's bookkeeper for 6 years. Quiet, precise, sharp as a scalpel. She once caught a $48 billing error from a client who'd tried to round in their favor. The woman's a hawk. All right, I said, leaning back into my chair. What is it? There's a withdrawal from the family savings. 62,000. Not marked, no invoice attached. I froze. That can't be right, I said, almost laughing. Maybe it was the Café transfer. We had an agreement. I signed off on it. No, she replied, voice flat. That one went through the business account. This came out of your joint personal. 2 days ago. I stared at the grain of my desk. Every knot in the wood suddenly looked deeper, darker. I thought you should know, Evelyn added softly. In case it wasn't you. I didn't say much after that. Just thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a long time, listening to the silence pressing against the windows. When Sienna got home that night, she was glowing again. Hair pinned up, cheeks flushed like she'd just run 5 blocks or been laughing a little too hard. She had takeout in one hand and her phone in the other. I figured we could eat something fun tonight, she said cheerfully. I've been running all day and I didn't want to cook. I nodded, helped her unpack the bags. She moved through the kitchen easily, almost too easily. Like a woman floating through a life that didn't weigh on her anymore. When we finally sat down at the table, I reached for my glass of water and asked as casually as I could, "Hey, did we move some money around this week?" She didn't look up right away. Just unfolded a napkin, dabbed the corner of her mouth like it was nothing. "What do you mean?" "From the family account," I said. "A big chunk. 62,000. She set the napkin down slowly. "Oh. Yeah," she said, as if I'd asked if she'd paid the electric bill. "That was for some equipment changes. We upgraded the espresso station, plus the signage ended up costing more than we thought." "More than we thought." "You didn't mention it," I said, keeping my tone even. "I didn't think I needed to run every detail by you," she replied, her smile thinning. "It's all going into the cafe." "That's not what I'm saying." "Well, that's what it sounds like." There it was. The shift. The sharpness under her voice. The way her eyes flashed for a second like I'd accused her of something. "I'm not trying to fight," I said carefully. I thought we were working as a team on this." She leaned back in her chair, arms crossing. "Landon, come on. You said you believed in this. What, now you want me to check in every time we need to buy a chair or hang a light fixture?" "No," I said, slower now. "But we're not just buying chairs, are we?" A pause. Too long. Then she laughed, short, breathy, dismissive. "You're being dramatic. You always get like this when you feel out of control." And maybe she was right. Maybe I was reacting from that old, stubborn place inside me that liked to hold onto the reins too tightly. But something was wrong. I knew it. Felt it deep down. Because her voice didn't carry any warmth. Just irritation. Like I was a burden. A speed bump on her way to something better. I looked across the table at the woman I'd loved for nearly 15 years. And I couldn't shake this one terrifying thought: she wasn't building this cafe with me. She was building it without me. I told myself I was just going for a coffee. That's it. Nothing more. But the truth? I needed to see it. The place I'd poured our savings into. The place Sienna talked about like it was some living, breathing thing, full of warmth and promise and opportunity. The place that had slowly started replacing our marriage in every conversation. She'd mentioned the soft opening would be soon. She didn't invite me. Said she'd let me know when it was more polished. But I figured, hey, I'm not a stranger. I'm her husband. The investor. I helped build this. So one Thursday morning, when I had a late start at work, I got in the truck and drove across town. Downtown looked the same as always. Busy, humming with that caffeinated urgency. But when I turned onto the block where the cafe sat, something shifted in my chest. It was a charming little corner space, tall windows, soft gold lettering across the glass, Café Aurelia. I parked across the street and just watched for a minute. 2 women with yoga mats were walking out with iced lattes. A young guy in a hoodie sat out front scrolling his phone, sipping something with oat milk and cinnamon on top. It was nice. Warm wood, soft lighting, pendant bulbs hanging from a pale ceiling. The kind of place that looked like it belonged on a curated Instagram feed. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first: espresso, baked something sweet, maybe almonds. There was music playing, quiet and inoffensive. The air felt curated. Like even the ambience was edited. Then I saw him. Tall. Tidy beard. Rolled up sleeves. Laughing with the barista behind the counter like this was his second living room. Nico. He looked up briefly when the bell on the door chimed. Our eyes met. No flicker of recognition. No smile. No nod. Just a bored, neutral glance, like I was some guy off the street. I walked up to the counter slowly, trying to piece something together that suddenly didn't make sense. "Morning," I said to the girl behind the register. "Coffee, black. Medium." She smiled, tapped the screen. Name for the order? Lon. I said it a little louder than necessary. Enough to make sure he heard. Still nothing. Not even a double take. I moved to the side, leaned against the counter while she prepped my drink. My eyes scanned the place again, the seating layout, the pastries in the glass case, the art on the walls. All of it looked cheaper than it should have been. Like it had been done in a rush, or worse, on the cheap. And that didn't make sense. Not with how much we'd put into this. Not with the numbers Sienna had given me. Nico walked past me at one point, heading toward the back. I stepped in front of him slightly, just enough to stop him. Nico, right. He blinked like he was calculating how to answer. Then, with a half shrug, said, yeah. I'm Sienna's husband. A pause. The faintest shift in his expression, a tightening at the corners of his mouth. Then a nod. Right. Good to meet you, man. Busy morning. You here for a meeting or? No, I said. Just grabbing a coffee. Cool, he said flatly. Well, enjoy. And just like that, he brushed past me. I stood there a second longer, heart thudding in this slow, confused rhythm. I picked up my drink when it was ready, sat near the window, and watched them work. None of the staff looked at me twice. No one asked if I was part of the project. No one offered a tour, or a thank you, or even a hey, you must be the guy who helped fund this. Nothing. Just another customer with $5 and 10 quiet minutes to kill. I sat there and took slow sips, staring at the corner of the ceiling where a tile had already started peeling. The same ceiling Sienna had said would be perfect once we do the custom finish. The tables were mismatched. The lighting flickered slightly above the back counter. The espresso machine, the one I'd been told was top-tier Italian, was clearly second-hand. Something wasn't adding up. I finished my coffee, tossed the cup, and walked out without saying another word. And as I reached the truck and sat behind the wheel, I realized something cold and heavy had started to settle over me. This wasn't our cafe. It wasn't even her cafe. It was his. And I wasn't just a stranger at the door, I was the wallet that funded their little world. And now, I couldn't unsee it. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. But the silence that started hanging around our house. It felt haunted. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just quiet. Sienna started coming home later. Some nights it was 9. Other nights, closer to 11. Always with a tired smile and a quick excuse, sorry, we had to meet with the coffee supplier, or the fridge compressor's acting up again. But it wasn't just the hours. It was the absence. She didn't collapse onto the couch next to me anymore. Didn't ask what I'd eaten for dinner, didn't tell me how her day went. She moved through the house like she was underwater, slow, distant, and untouchable. I started making dinner anyway, out of habit. At first, I'd set a plate aside for her. Wrap it up, label it with the date, slide it into the fridge like a soft offering. But most mornings, I'd find it untouched. She'd say she wasn't hungry. Eventually, I stopped cooking for 2. There's something strange about living with someone who's still technically there, but feels miles away. You hear the shower running upstairs and realize you have no idea where they were for the last 6 hours. You wake up to a cold side of the bed and don't know when they climbed in, or if they ever did at all. One night, I stayed up. Just to see. I sat in the living room with the TV muted, the only light coming from the hallway. Midnight passed. Then 1. At 1:42 a.m., I heard the front door unlock. She stepped in quietly, her shoes in one hand, purse slung low, makeup half worn off. She didn't see me at first. When she did, she startled. Oh, you're up. I didn't ask where she'd been. I just looked at her. I had to meet a vendor late, she added quickly, not making eye contact. Their delivery windows are all over the place. You know how it is. Sure, I said. Voice low. I know how it is. She nodded, then padded up the stairs. No hug. No kiss. Not even a hand on my shoulder. I sat there a long time after she was gone. The house felt heavier somehow. Like every corner had started pulling away from the center, inch by inch. In the mornings, I'd watch her stir milk into her coffee without a word, her phone always just a tap away. Once, I glanced over her shoulder while she typed. She flipped the screen before I could read anything. Work stuff, she said with a tight smile. I didn't press. Because I wasn't sure what I'd do if I found out what I suspected. But the feeling, that low, aching throb in your gut when you know something's wrong but can't prove it, it became constant. I tried to break through. A few times, I'd ask if she wanted to go for dinner. Maybe take a drive out to the lake like we used to. She always had a reason not to. Too tired. Too much to do. Rain tomorrow. Maybe next week. Next week never came. She stopped touching me. Even small things, brushing my hand as we passed in the kitchen, leaning against my shoulder during a movie. Gone. One evening, I tried. I reached for her hand while we sat side by side on the couch, barely watching some baking show. She flinched, almost imperceptibly. But enough. She pulled her hand back, tucked it under a blanket, and didn't say a word. That was the night I stopped trying. I started waking up before her. Sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, lacing my boots slowly, staring at the floor while she breathed softly behind me. And every morning, I asked myself the same quiet question: where did she go? Not physically. But when did I lose her? Because I couldn't point to the day it changed. It was like someone turned the dial down, one notch at a time, until the woman I married was still in the room but not really there anymore. And the worst part? I still wanted to believe she'd come back. That this cafe, this chaos, this phase, would burn out, and she'd return to the quiet version of us we used to call home. But deep down, I knew. Something was unraveling. And I was the last thread holding it together. Some truths don't explode, they sit there, quiet, waiting for you to finally notice them. And when you do, they've already taken root. It started with a question I couldn't shake. Who actually owns the cafe? Not in theory. Not in the way Sienna would say, it's ours, or we built it together. No, I mean on paper. In contracts. In signatures. In cold, legal ink. I had no reason to doubt her, not officially. But I did. Because somewhere between all those late nights and disappearing acts, something stopped lining up. So I did what any man does when silence starts feeling like betrayal. I checked. Quietly. Carefully. Alone. That Saturday, she was out by 8 a.m. said she had a wholesale tasting event, which sounded like something she'd made up on the drive to the door. I didn't question it. Just kissed her cheek, nodded, and wished her luck. Then I turned on my laptop and opened the joint account records. The cafe payments were there, sure. Dozens of them. Equipment, permits, vendor charges. The trail looked clean, except for one odd detail I hadn't seen before: a large transfer made a month ago to a company name I didn't recognize. North Route Collective, LLC. Sounded like a landscaping business. Or a nonprofit. I copied the name and searched the business registry. And that's when it hit me like a fist to the chest. Owner, Nico M. Alvarez. Managing member, Nico M. Alvarez. Registered agent, Nico M. Alvarez. No mention of Sienna anywhere. I refreshed the page, like the truth might change on the second try. But it didn't. That was the name on the lease. That was the name tied to the property. That was the name that owned everything I'd invested in, every chair, every espresso machine, every branded napkin and hanging bulb. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen like it had just betrayed me. The cafe wasn't in Sienna's name. It never had been. I dug deeper, pulling receipts, cross-checking invoices she'd sent me with actual registry files. Her name came up once, as creative consultant. Not even a partial owner. She'd pitched the dream like it was ours. Sold it with her eyes wide, with that old fire in her voice I'd missed for years. But in reality, I'd invested in his business. Unknowingly. Willingly. Blindly. I felt sick. Not the angry, shouting kind of sick. The still kind. The quiet, stunned kind. The kind where your heart drops to the floor and you don't even bend down to pick it up. She came home late that night. I didn't ask where she'd been. She hung her coat, walked into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water like everything was fine. I watched her from the hallway, barely breathing. I didn't say a word. Because what do you even say? Hey, I checked. Turns out you made me fund your lover's business. Should we talk about that over tea? The weight of it settled in my chest like a break in a lake. I walked upstairs without a word, closed the door behind me, and sat on the edge of our bed. She followed a few minutes later, phone still in her hand, replying to someone she didn't mention. She didn't notice I was staring. Didn't notice that I already knew. Or maybe she did. Maybe she was just hoping I wouldn't figure it out. But I had. And now? Now I was watching a woman I no longer recognized brush her teeth in the mirror beside me, as if we were still on the same side of something. But we weren't. Not anymore. It was a Monday morning when the call came in. I remember because I was halfway through tying my boots, sitting on the edge of the bed, and the phone buzzed across the nightstand like it had something urgent to say. I glanced over. Evelyn. My firm's bookkeeper. Strange. She never called me that early. I picked up. Yeah. Her voice was tight. Almost whispering. Landon, it's the cafe. It's burning. My throat dried instantly. What? I saw it on the local feed. Someone posted a video. It's bad. I thought you should, but I was already up, already moving. The truck keys were in my hand before I even realized I'd grabbed them. I don't remember locking the door behind me, don't remember checking the mirrors. I just remember the way my heart slammed against my ribs the entire drive there. It didn't make sense. Fires don't just happen. Not on Monday mornings. Not out of nowhere. But then again, neither do betrayals. By the time I reached downtown, the street was blocked off. A heavy ribbon of caution tape stretched between two signs, and behind it, the smoke curled like fingers through the cold spring air. I parked 3 blocks away and ran the rest of it. The cafe, or what was left of it, looked like something out of a war zone. The windows were blackened. Smoke still hissed out from one of the top corners. A few small flames licked at a beam near the entrance, but most of the blaze had already been killed. I stood there, frozen. The sign, that elegant gold lettering Sienna had obsessed over, was half-melted, warped from the heat. Inside, I could see chairs overturned, walls streaked in soot, the mural reduced to a smear of ash. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the fire chief to notice me. "You the owner?" he asked, clipboard in hand. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What was I supposed to say? No. I'm the man who paid for it. I'm the idiot who funded the fantasy. But no, I don't own a damn thing. I shook my head. No. Just checking. He nodded like he'd heard that before and moved on. That's when I started looking around for them. For her. For Nico. But neither of them were there. Not standing with the responders. Not with the crowd. Not even across the street. No tears. No panic. No sign of anyone who should have cared. I pulled out my phone. Dialed Sienna. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I didn't leave a message. What could I possibly say? I stood on the curb, eyes stinging, maybe from the smoke, maybe not, and realized I wasn't just watching a building fall apart. I was watching the last piece of our story collapse right in front of me. The dream she sold me, the one I believed in, even when I shouldn't have, was now a heap of scorched wood and twisted metal. And she wasn't here to see it burn. She wasn't anywhere. That's when it hit me, really hit me. This wasn't just a fire. It was a finish line. And I was the only one standing on the wrong side of it. Silence has a way of making everything louder. After the fire, the noise stopped. No more texts. No missed calls. No footsteps on the stairs. Just quiet, thick, suffocating, and constant. Sienna vanished. Not like someone ducking away to process things or take a breath. No. She vanished like smoke, here one moment, then nowhere. 2 days. That's how long she was gone. I called her that first afternoon, 5 times. Straight to voicemail. I tried again in the evening. I sent a message that said, "Are you safe?" Nothing. I checked her side of the closet, clothes were still there. Passport too. Makeup bag untouched. But something felt wrong. Like she'd walked out without a plan, but with a purpose. By the second day, I drove over to her mother's house, even though they hadn't spoken much in years. I knocked. Waited. Her mother opened the door in a bathrobe and squinted like I'd woken her from something heavier than sleep. "Have you seen her?" I asked. Her lips thinned. No, she didn't call. She shook her head. Why would she? That stung more than I expected. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, waiting for her to offer something else, a name, a guess, a sliver of concern. But she didn't. I thanked her and left, empty-handed. Back at home, the house felt heavier. Like it knew she was gone. Her coffee mug sat on the counter. The one she used every morning, even though it had a crack down the side. I picked it up, ran my thumb along the jagged line, and felt that same fracture somewhere in my chest. The bed stayed cold. Her robe hung behind the bathroom door. And I kept waking up at night thinking I'd heard her come in, the soft click of the front lock, the creak of the stairs. But when I got up to check, the room stayed dark and empty. I don't know if it was fear or grief or just plain exhaustion, but by the end of the second day, I stopped looking at my phone. Stopped expecting it to buzz. I just sat in the quiet. And thought. About the woman who used to call me from grocery aisles just to ask if I liked one brand of granola over another. About the mornings when we'd sit on the porch in silence, sipping coffee and letting the day unfold slow. About how somewhere between, "I need your help," and, "It's just a business partner," I lost her. I started replaying things. Conversations. Smiles that were a little too wide. Nights she claimed to be exhausted but couldn't sit still. It all looked different now. Not sharper, just honest. It's strange. When betrayal finally sinks in, it doesn't come with fireworks. No dramatic music. Just a slow, tired ache that creeps in like winter under your door. That night, I sat on the couch in the dark, the TV on mute, and thought, she chose him. Not just romantically, if that was even part of it. She chose his world. His business. His name on the lease. And she left me in the rubble of a dream she once asked me to believe in. And still, I waited. Because part of me, stupid as it sounds, still needed to hear her say it. Still needed to look her in the eyes and ask, why? And by the time the knock finally came, late, quiet, hesitant, I didn't run to the door. I just sat up slowly. Heart calm, hands steady, and grief settled. Because whatever was about to come through that door, it wasn't my wife anymore. I heard the key in the lock before I saw her. It turned slow, like she wasn't sure if it would still fit. The door creaked open, and there she was, standing in the threshold like a stranger waiting to be let in. Sienna. She didn't look up right away. Just stood there, small suitcase in one hand, the other clutching her phone like a lifeline. She looked older somehow. Not physically, more like someone who'd walked through something they'd never planned for and didn't win. I didn't move. I just sat on the couch and watched. She stepped inside without a word, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Her eyes flicked up, finally meeting mine. I didn't see the woman who used to smile at me across our dinner table. I saw someone emptied out. "Hi," she whispered. It hit harder than I expected, how hollow her voice sounded. Like even she wasn't sure she belonged here anymore. I nodded. "You all right?" She didn't answer right away. Just exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 2 days. "Where have you been?" I asked. "Come. Even." She set the suitcase down near the hallway. "A friend's place." I raised an eyebrow. "Nico." That made her flinch. Barely, but I caught it. "No," she said, almost too fast. "He's gone. He left the night of the fire. Disconnected everything. Bank account, phone, he just disappeared." I let that hang in the air a moment. "So," I said. "He used you." Her eyes closed. Just for a second. Then she nodded, slow. "Yes." I leaned back into the couch, arms folded across my chest. "And what about me?" She didn't answer. Because what could she say? "I didn't know," she finally murmured. "At least, not at first. I thought he cared. About the business. About me." I studied her. The way her shoulders had sunk. The way her voice cracked on that last word, me. "You knew he put the cafe in his name," I said. Silence. "I checked the registry," I added. "You made me believe it was ours." "I didn't want to scare you," she said weakly. I almost laughed. "Scare me? Or lose me?" She looked at the floor. "He said it was cleaner that way," she continued. "Easier with taxes. Faster permits." I told myself it didn't matter because we were building it together. But we weren't. She didn't argue. I stood then, slow, steady, and walked to the kitchen. Poured myself a glass of water. Not because I needed it, but because I needed a reason to look away from her. She stayed frozen in place. Still near the door. Still unsure if she was welcome. When I finally turned back, I spoke quiet. "You could have come to me. You could have told me what was happening." "I was ashamed," she said, voice low. "No," I said. "You were caught." That landed. I saw it in her eyes. For a moment, I wanted her to fight. To explain. To yell, to cry, to fall apart. Something. But she didn't. She just nodded. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, voice almost too soft to hear. "I just didn't know where else to go." That was the part that broke me. Not because it meant she wanted to stay, but because she still saw this place as a fallback. I walked to the table, pulled open the drawer, and took out the envelope I'd placed there the day before. I set it on the counter between us. Her eyes dropped to it. She didn't touch it. Didn't have to. She knew exactly what it was. Her lip trembled. But the tears didn't fall. And I realized, in that moment, the version of Sienna I'd loved, the one who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen and laugh too loud at my bad jokes, she'd been gone for a long time. This woman was just what was left. "I understand," she whispered. I nodded once. She turned away, not toward the stairs, but back toward the door. "I'll come back for the rest of my things," she said without looking at me. "You can send someone," I said. She froze, then gave a small nod. "Okay." And then she walked out. No hug. No apology. No dramatic goodbye. Just the sound of the door closing behind her. And in that silence, thick, final, absolute, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace. Not yet. But clarity. The hardest part about betrayal isn't the lie itself. It's how long you keep lying to yourself afterward. The morning after Sienna left, I woke up to the quiet again, but this time, it felt different. Not hollow. Not haunted. Just still. I moved through the house with no need to pretend anymore. Her coat wasn't hanging by the door. Her coffee mug sat untouched, just like the past 2 weeks. I didn't open the fridge looking for her leftovers. Didn't check my phone expecting her name to light up the screen. She was gone. For good, this time. And the ache I thought might crush me, it didn't. It settled. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, same spot where she'd once leaned over my shoulder, wine glass in hand, talking about opening a cafe that would finally feel like us. I stared at the envelope in front of me, the one she hadn't taken with her. It was sealed now. Inside, the signed divorce petition, a list of every transfer I'd made to fund the cafe, and a copy of the business registry with Nico's name circled in red ink. I didn't include a note. I didn't need to. Some things don't require explanation. They just need acknowledgement. Later that night, I walked over to the fireplace. Lit it. Not for warmth, just to watch something burn on my terms for once. As the flames flickered, I thought back to every time she said, "Trust me." Funny how easy those words come when you know the other person wants so badly to believe you. But I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I'd gone through that, the disbelief, the humiliation, the bitterness. What was left now wasn't rage. It was clarity. I didn't lose my wife to another man. I lost her to a version of herself she couldn't be around me. The version that needed admiration, applause, fresh starts. The version that didn't want a partner, just a launch pad. And I gave her that. I gave her everything. The trust, the money, the chance. And she spent it, all of it, on a lie that couldn't hold up to fire. She texted me once, 2 weeks after she left. A single message, "I never meant to hurt you." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Because meaning doesn't matter when the damage is done. What matters is what comes after. So I rebuilt. Not out of spite. Not to prove anything. Just to remember who I was before I spent all my strength holding up someone else's dream. I poured my time into my own business. Took on more jobs. Started getting back out into the world. One morning, I even stopped by a new cafe on the east side. Independent, small, no gold lettering or pretentious furniture. Just good coffee and quiet music. The barista smiled and asked if I was new. I nodded. Yeah. Starting fresh. She smiled. Well. Then this one's on the house. I left a tip big enough to cover it twice. Back home that evening, I sat down at my kitchen table again. Same place. Same chair. But the silence. It wasn't a punishment anymore. It was freedom. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that you ignored every red flag. If you ever poured yourself into someone else's dream only to be left behind in the ashes. You're not alone. Some people don't break your heart, they break your belief. But belief comes back. Stronger. Sharper. Wiser. So here's the question I had to ask myself, and maybe you do too. What would you rather lose, the person who betrayed you, or yourself, trying to hold them close? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit something in you, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Because next time, we're telling the story of a man who thought loyalty meant silence, until one secret made him speak. I'll see you there.